I thought you were mad at me for like 2 months. I didn't want to do an expose. I didn't want to do a call out thing. I didn't want to start drama. I am not against fully sponsored content in any way. What I was against for a while was people trying to get away with it. I'm just cranking away on this script and I'm like, this is great. And then I read it the next day. I'm like, this is crap. Nobody cares. You know. Anytime I see somebody on the sidewalk says, "Are you MrMobile?" and we have a good chat, it's great. But we're not talking about me.
I'd blocked you for like a couple of months, but then I unblocked you.
That's what I knew it. I just knew it.
What's up, guys? Saf here on SuperSaf Speaks, and we've got a new guest on this week's episode. He has been one of the most requested guests, and also, I'd say one of the best voices in the tech YouTube space. It is, of course, Michael Fisher, the MrMobile. We talk about foldables, his When Smartphones Were Fun series, a little bit about what goes on behind a MrMobile video from start to finish, the ethics of being a tech reviewer and the best ways to disclose partnerships and sponsorships, and of course, much more with some fun stuff towards the end. Hope you enjoy it. Fisher, welcome to the podcast.
Safe, Mr. Safe. It's safe, right? SuperSaf. How you doing, my friend?
Man, great to see you after a long time,
dude. It's too long. Can I start with a confession?
Yes, please go ahead.
I thought you were mad at me for like 2
Really?
months. I did. Because
Why?
Because Saf, you asked me to be on one of your most excellent collabs, and I couldn't carve out the time, and I said no, but I think I said no too late, right? So not only was I not able to do it, but I didn't even get back to you in time. And then Twitter made one of its algorithmic decisions, and I just kind of didn't see you in my feed as much, and I was, for some reason, this translated into a subconscious, like, Saf hates me now. Shut up.
So I'd blocked you for like a couple of months, but then I unblocked you.
That's what
I
knew it.
No,
I just knew it.
No, I totally understand. With that, it's that collaboration. It's such a difficult one to put together, but it's like a lot of people don't understand that people are busy, obviously, and there's so much going on. So sometimes people can't make it, and it's totally understandable. But then, the comments.
Oh, every time.
It's like, where is MrMobile?
Guy? Yeah,
you forgot this guy. And then it's just like, is everything okay between you and you and MrMobile? I was like, look, dude,
right.
You couldn't make it, unfortunately. But then even now, to this day, like that, because that video, thankfully, it continues getting views over the year, right? Until we drop the next one.
Right.
To this day, there'll always be comments saying, where is this person? Where is that person?
9 months later.
Where is this person? When I started this podcast, I mentioned in the intro that I'll be getting some guests on, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll be pleased to know that you have been one of the most requested guests on the podcast. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
So my the SuperSaf followers really do appreciate your content, as many others do. So it's
great to know.
It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, man. So I appreciate you taking out the time.
No, man, thank you. And you know what's funny? I kind of took about 6 months off from podcast guest appearances because I found I was doing too many of them and I wasn't able to kick out as many videos. But because of some changes and because of some differences to my content approach now, whereas the quantity is down, the quality is hopefully a little bit up, I've been able to be like, I really miss just having conversations. And I keep promising I will start a podcast of my own, which will happen this year. But until then, I'm like, I just need to see my friends again. I miss them all. We need to chat. So thank you for the invitation. It was great. Well timed.
No, you're welcome. Yeah, you're right. It's while we have to do this virtual chat, it's nice to actually see face to face until we can meet again, which hopefully will be soon.
Amen to that, man. Amen. You look exactly the same.
Oh, thank you. It's the sunglasses and the beard. They cover the aging. The grey hair does not, unfortunately.
I gotta get me both of those. Yeah.
Hey, well, sunglasses always the best trick. The best trick. A lot of people keep asking me why I'm wearing sunglasses. It's like, look, having a bad day, not had any sleep. There you go. It's all good.
It's instant hangover cure. Yeah.
There you go. So we're going to be talking tech, of course, but I like to do things a little bit differently on these podcasts and, get to know the guests a bit more of background for those who are curious and don't know as well. And also some fun, non-related stuff, which I'm hoping would not have been covered on any of the podcasts. All right. So
exciting.
I like to mix it up a little bit. So there's going to be a bit more of a fun section towards the end as well. But we are, of course, going to start off with the usual. So whenever I have a guest on, what are your daily drivers? Smartphone, laptop, camera. Everybody wants to know.
Yeah, I love it. Let's do that in reverse order. Well, the camera is the Sony A7S III. The camera, of course, everyone went nuts for earlier in 2020. And I, as usual, said, look, you camera nerds are very tiresome, and I wish you'd stop talking about this. And then I went on a road trip with David Kogan, our mutual friend, the unlocker, and he let me look through the viewfinder as he was shooting with the A7S III. And I said, well, that's a trick. You've tricked me, because I just put my eye to that and it just appeared that I wasn't looking through anything. It was just the real world. And he's like, yeah, and it films that way too. And I'm like, no, surely not. And he showed me the footage and I was like, this is the most accurate reproduction of what I see when I encounter the world with my eyeballs that I've ever encountered. So I immediately bought that camera. I said, I need it. So I shoot on the A7S III and I couldn't be happier. Really couldn't.
It's so good. I've been using the 4K 120 FPS trick for B-roll.
Yes.
It's just like, just that, and then you've got so much to work with. It's just amazing. Absolutely love
You
it.
roll for 2.5 seconds and you've got 16 seconds to choose from. Yeah, it's like you don't even have to stabilize it. It doesn't matter. You just slow it down.
Oh yeah, fine. That's it. I mean, I love that camera. Been using it myself for some time as well now. Any particular lens? This is a personal question. I'm just very interested. What's your go-to lens on the...
My go-to is still the kit lens from the A7S II that I used forever, the 2470.
Okay.
And I've got a really great macro telephoto one, the f2.8. I forgot what the other specs are on it. Oh, do I have it? Oh, I have it right here. Yeah, it's a big chonker. Yeah, the G Master nice. F2.8, 90 millimeter maybe. I'm bad with millimeters, so I'm probably getting all this wrong. And then I just picked up this tiny little wide angle. What does it say on it, what it is? I'm such a noob. Oh, the f1.8, the G Master 20 millimeter, I believe.
Oh, nice and wide. Yeah. Awesome. No, that's a good selection.
Again, I think, thank you. And I think when you get into it with other camera guys, it can get really wonky and really specky like it is in the tech space sometimes. But I want to say that like this assortment of 3 lenses has given me the ability to do, really tight macros on things like logos, on things like components, display mats, all that stuff. The 2470 is the middle for pretty much the majority of my shots. And that ultra wide one is so nice because you know how it is when you're shooting a smartwatch, Saf. You gotta be able. Like, it is so hard with the conventional lens. You're way back here, right? Yeah, you're putting your camera on your shoulder and holding your wrist out as far as it'll go, and it's barely in the frame. So getting that wide angle really helps with that. So, yeah, it's a good assortment.
Totally imagine. So I've got the 28 to 75 Tamron, and I have that issue all the time. Whenever I'm trying to shoot, it's like 28 is quite punched in, right? Yeah. And I only moved on to Sony like a couple of years ago. Again, thanks to Kogan and Thunder for persuading me to jump onto Team Sony because I was like Panasonic.
It's a good move.
Before that. But yeah, I mean, I still need to work on my lens collection. But yeah, I totally feel you. I do need to get a wide angle just because of those shots. Whenever, even if I'm holding a phone, it's just like, okay, I need to go a little bit further. And it's just like,
a little further, and then you can't really see it. And this is we say the same thing about phones. I think people are probably about to get tired of me using the word versatile when it comes to phone cameras. But really, the more cameras they stick on there, it's like, sometimes it's a trick. Like Miriam calls them sticker cameras when they just put a 2 megapixel macro sensor on there just to say they have another camera. But really, the more focal lengths they offer you on a smartphone or a camera, the more situations you can easily shoot in. So I'm totally aboard with adding cameras to whatever it is, or adding lenses. What's the other side of it? The laptop is very boring, right? The MacBook Pro 2016. 16-inch 2019. Always make that mistake. Which is great because we were right before we got on the air here. I asked you to put your ears on and tell me which microphone sounds better, right? Mm-hmm. And I switched inputs on you, and you said what? You said it was what? If you had to give it a percentage in terms of closeness.
Oh, that's a tough one. They were pretty close. I edged one slightly over the other. This the one that you're on right now.
Yeah, you said it was just slightly better. Well, the one I'm on right now is a beautiful microphone from Earthworks. that they sent me to kind of try out. I'm not even reviewing it there. I was just like, I'm not going to do any content, but they were like, yeah, we just want your thoughts. Cool. Well, that microphone is lovely. I used it to record my OnePlus 9 Pro review in a hotel room, and it sounds great. But the other mic I let you listen to was the built-in mic on the MacBook Pro 2019 16-inch. And they're so close, dude. It's remarkable. So this machine is really just hasn't stopped impressing me, honestly. Which
will you be switching to the next gen with the
M1
rumored M1X, whatever it's going to be called?
Yeah, I think the one thing I don't like about this machine is that it's such a honkin' heavy monster. So yeah, and from what everyone tells me with the M1, you get some Final Cut workflows in there, and it just blows right through them. Do you have one? Are you using one?
No, so I did have the Air for a short review time, but I'm just so used to the bigger screen that I just like the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Yeah. So until the next one comes out with the new M1 chips. Also, I was a little bit reluctant because I was just like, what if something doesn't work as well as I need it to?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'll let everybody do the beta testing for me, and I'll jump on when it's all safe.
Exactly the same situation here. And then on the phone side, I swap depending on whether it's a weekday or weekend. On the weekdays, It is always the Galaxy Z Fold 2 that is my true daily driver, which I just continue to adore. And on the weekends, I switch. I'm all foldable all the time. So on the weekends, I swap out between a Motorola Razr 5G and a Galaxy Z Flip 5G. And those also accompany me most weekdays, if we're honest, as well. I carry two phones, and those I carry the small boys when I'm, don't want to carry a bag, essentially, because the Z Fold 2 is such a brick.
Yeah, it is a big one. No iPhone.
No, I mean, it's in my bag because I need it for filming. Like, it's the best.
Okay.
It's the most portable B-roll camera, and I need it for Clubhouse if I want to put up with that. But but no, I prefer I don't prefer the iPhone as a daily driver. It isn't my speed.
That's interesting because the previous guests that we've had on, like, and myself as well, is generally the tech YouTuber setup generally is one iPhone, one Android phone, right? So for me, it's the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the I'm back on the S21 Ultra for now. I was on the OnePlus 9 Pro, but for everybody, it's usually so. That's interesting that you do have an iPhone, but it's not one of your two daily drivers.
It's not, no, and by the way, I will say this: I think that's prudent. With the two dominant mobile platforms, I think it's really prudent to have one iPhone and one Android phone just to stay abreast of it. I often find that when I want to comment intelligently about where the iPhone is for a video or for a podcast or whatever, I have to kind of go back and throw a SIM into the iPhone that I carry anyway in the bag, but like actually carry it, and kind of re-qualify on it almost because I forget things. But it's just there's so many little tiny factors in terms of personal preference that go into our decisions about what we carry. And for me, the iPhone just hasn't satisfied what I need outside of the video camera. It doesn't satisfy the criteria I need to give it pocket real estate because I carry so much crap.
That's interesting. And the weekend switch, that's also different, like to everybody else switching over. Any particular reason for that?
Yeah, there are two reasons. One of them is from a content perspective. When the foldables really started coming out in earnest, I said, I want to cover these as my primary area of focus, and to do that, to see how they age, because everyone's so terrified about their durability, I need to carry them 24/7. So I'm going to buy every one there is. So we did. We have a budget for that from Future. MrMobile has its own little money, bag. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to buy every foldable there is. So I did. And then I'm just like, well, I have to use them as often as I can, because it's not enough just to buy a foldable and throw it in a drawer and then dust it off in 5.5 months and say 6 months later. No. You have to use them ideally every day. And it's still, obviously, the weekend swap is still suboptimal. Because ideally I would be using them all every single day, but this is as close as I can get to actually using them as much as I want. So that's the reason from a content perspective. And then from a personal perspective, man, the Z Fold 2 is where I get so much work done, particularly from coffee shops when I don't want to lug my laptop around. And on the weekend, frankly, I I don't want to do as much work. I want to give that time to myself. So a smaller phone that is capable of less is what I really want. I want to resist the urge to be like, well, it may be Saturday at 2 p.m., but I could bust out a real quick script in a half hour. No. Take the time to yourself, leave your razor in your pocket, look around,
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting perspective on how you use your phones, and it's very unique. I'm not sure of anybody else who has that sort of setup. So that's super cool.
Thank you.
On the topic of foldables, right? Because I think you're one of the people. Because I mean, I love foldables. I know me and Thunder love foldables, but because I have the iPhone Android thing, I'm always switching my Android phone, right? So my SIM card's coming out of one, going into the other one. So I had it in the Z Fold 2, Z Fold 2, I have to say. My British followers are going to hate me. I do this every episode.
I gotta say, it sounds way better as Z. Z is so much classier. Z.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what it is? The thing is, because I speak to you Americans so much, my language gets influenced, right?
We corrupt
and then,
you, yes.
Yeah, I get corrupted by you guys. And then my British followers is like, you traitor. Because just in the previous episode, because I mean, even something as simple as, so MrMobile, right? So the way you would say it is MrMobile, right?
Mm-hmm. But
so I'm sure by the end of this...
You say it in a classier way. I'm going to start saying Mr. Oh, I like that already. Yes.
Okay, so you're going to do that for one of the upcoming videos and see if anybody notices.
yeah, I will.
just slip that in there. Slip that in there. I mean, yeah, so foldables, because I also want to talk about the When Phones Were Fun series, which we'll get to, but
yeah,
I think phones have not been as fun for a long time until we had foldables. Would you agree?
I completely agree. Foldables almost single-handedly saved the smartphone segment, I think, from just eternal boredom. I mean, we were getting to a point where they were, I will paraphrase Marcus, who helped launch MrMobile, who's one of the reasons MrMobile even exists as a brand. And he said back in 2016, okay, so what are you going to do when smartphones are not worthy of coverage anymore? And I said, what are you talking about? He says, in a few years, I think these are going to be as exciting as cordless phones. What do you do then? And I was like, damn, I hadn't thought about that. And, for 2016, 17 into 18, I saw that trend of like, God, he's right. Obviously, there have always been exceptions to that. Obviously, there's always been little spikes of excitement. But it wasn't until we started getting foldables, when they really became a thing with the Fold re-release and then the first Razor, where it was like, okay, these obviously still have issues. These are very first-generation products. But I started to feel like, if these aren't going to be the entirety of the future, they're going to be a major component of the future. And it was, I would say it was a crushing wave of relief that washed over me. So I was like, oh, good. I'm not going to have to pivot this channel to, all Tesla all the time or something else, something weird. Thank God I can stay talking about my phones,
Yeah, I mean, so the foldable for you of choice right now is the Z Fold 2, right?
Yeah.
Which of the foldables have really kind of stood out to you? Have you had a chance to try out any of the newer ones that have been floating around recently?
I mean this one right here.
Look at there it is. There it is.
I just received this is the Huawei Mate X2. And I just received it an hour ago, and I said, well, let's see if Saf wants me to actually open this in the pod, because I haven't seen it. I haven't laid eyes on it.
You're getting an exclusive first impressions and first look from MrMobile on the podcast.
Right? Let's take a look. Have you laid eyes on this yet?
I've not had it in hand, unfortunately, as yet.
I was in the same boat.
But honestly, it's been so crazy over the past few weeks. Dude, how many new devices have come out?
Every single time I wake up, I look on Twitter, because we're behind you, time zone wise, of course, and I'm just like, what's Saf playing with today? That big old camera continent on the back of that Xiaomi with the other display. I'm like, yeah. I think I said out loud, I'm like, how is Saf going to be able to fit a picture of himself on that tiny postage stamp? And then you did. And then you actually did.
Thank you. I had to be done. It had to be done.
Yeah, it did have to be done. I would really like to take a look at that, and I want to ask you about Xiaomi in a second, because of course their foldable is something that's very interesting to me. But let me just peel this sucker off here. This comes to me from Nishal over at XDA, I believe.
Nice.
As somebody who carries the Z Fold 2 all the time, I have been told, we kind of all know what this is all about, right? Huawei decided that they were going to go with a much more conventional aspect ratio when closed. It's not going to be as narrow. It's going to be more like a phone. Oh, that first mechanical move. Yeah, I mean, it is. We got all kind of a little bit worried when Samsung was like, hey, for the Fold 2, it's going to be a little thicker. It's not going to be quite as much of a diving board as the first Fold. But I was like, is that going to be too wide? And it wasn't. It was almost perfect for me. And now Huawei is coming to town with we've basically made a note-sized device when it's closed. And my first impression is that while it probably wouldn't be my first choice, because I've grown quite used to the narrow aspect of the closed Fold 2, I think a lot of people would favor this. Because when closed, it really does closely resemble a more conventional phone. Oh, did you hear that? Let's do this.
Yeah.
Do that again. It kind of opens itself when you pop it a little bit. Well, no, it doesn't. But it has a little assist. Here, let's do that again. That's a nice, solid slam home there on this Mate X2. Saf, can I ask you your opinion?
Yes, of course.
How do you feel about the omission of the interior camera on the Mate X2?
Okay, so the only kind of use would be for video calls. I don't do many video calls on my smartphone. So for me personally, I don't think it would be that much of a big deal. However, if I was live streaming, for example, then that's something that I can kind of see. That, okay, if I'm doing an Instagram live or something or the other, then not having that there, which I can also see myself on, would be a little... it wouldn't be the same sort of experience. Now, obviously, I can use the outer display for that, but if you've got a big display, I kind of want to see it in its entirety, right?
I completely hear where you're coming from. I at first was so in the other boat. I was like, look, I don't do video calls often either, but when I do, and if you're telling me I have one of the world's most expensive phones and most capable phones, and I can only take a video call on the smaller, less impressive display, I found it... Oh, it was so frustrating to even hear about. But, there are some folks who are like, whether for privacy reasons or whatever, they just don't want that interior camera, at all on that primary display. And an exterior selfie camera is enough. So I get it. I think there are cases to be made in both directions. Personally, I don't think I'll be changing my mind. I will say, of course, it's nice to see a big canvas uninterrupted by the hideous hole punch, which I don't like. I don't much like notches. I don't much like hole punches, but that's because I'm unreasonable. We have to settle for one, right?
So, I mean, what would be the for you if it wasn't no punch out, no notch? Would you not mind a bit of a bezel? Is that what it is, or would you want a pop up or something like that?
This is going to be very unpopular, but I never minded the Galaxy Fold 1 and its little notch in the corner there. Yes, it looked weird. I don't mind a weird look. I think the only notches I ever objected to on phones were ones that aped the iPhone 10's notch for no good reason back in 2016, 2017, because it was like, this is stupid. Apple did that because they needed all that room for the Face ID array, and at the time, no Android manufacturer needed that much space for their stupid camera. That was just a very transparent move to ape the iPhone, so I thought those were stupid. But I've never been as down on notches. I've always thought that hole punches are the uglier solution, and they also have a side effect of making cameras worse for people like you and me, who love the selfie cameras for vlogging, and as a result, we really like a wide-angle camera. And when you're doing a hole punch in a display, you simply can't put a wide-angle camera in there without making that hole punch so big it's comical, and that's why we've seen, one of the reasons we've seen such a decrease in the number of phones offering a wide-angle selfie camera, and I think it's very inconvenient. So until we figure out how to put them under displays in a better way, we're stuck with these solutions.
I think we're maybe some time away because we've seen the early under display cameras and they are not good.
They're
so
not
far.
good. No.
Yeah,
I know.
we're some way away.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the foldables, so it'll be really interesting to see your review of the Mate X2 and how that compares to the Z Fold 2. But with foldables now, obviously we've got Xiaomi's coming up, and foldables are now becoming a lot more mainstream, and there's going to be many more coming out. Where do you see foldables going in the next few years?
I think we will see the prices come down, and then that will kind of feed into this greater mainstream acceptance. Because not only has Samsung, I quite liked how Samsung did the fold and then the flip, not just because of the different form factor explorations, but because you went from a world in which Samsung offered a $2,000 foldable, and then within a year also offered a $1,300 or a $1,400 foldable. And you know how it goes. The prices come down on these pretty quickly. So you knew it was going to be only a matter of time before, wow, I could spend $800 or $900 and have a flip phone that works well for all the applications I need. Like, that's cool. So I think we continue to see the prices drop as the R&D is gradually paid off. And also as competitors come in. You know, Motorola keeps putting its Razr 5G on sale, despite the fact that it's only 6 months old. Maybe doesn't bode too well for its sales numbers, I don't know. But it's great for consumers who can now leap on another foldable option for, in some cases, like $8.99 now on Amazon. And then you have companies like TCL who are seems like every year they're teasing us, aren't they? Hey, here's a phone that's going to change the way you think about phones and tablets and everything in between. You're like, oh, cool. Are you going to build it? And they're like, no, we're just playing. Oh.
Yeah. I remember seeing when there was one of the TCL briefings that they had those there, and they were like, obviously model phones, and it was like, okay, I want this. When is it going to be on sale? It's like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, never. But you know, thankfully they have said that this year we can expect an actual foldable phone from TCL that will go on sale to regular people. So that's exciting. At least there's that.
TCL always come at very competitive prices, so that's
exactly
going to make it a lot more accessible.
Exactly. And I was pinning a lot of hopes on LG as well. I know you talked about that so much with E last week, so yeah. I guess we won't go too deep into that. But that's a bit of a shame. But thankfully, again, Xiaomi, Oppo, all of these other manufacturers who are obviously dumping a large number of resources into foldable and rollable development. So that's great news. And I think it will all ultimately result in broader penetration, lower prices, which is great for everybody because everyone should experience the joy of a foldable. I'm such a shill for them, but I don't care. I love them.
I love it as well. I mean, hopefully I'll be able to use foldables for a longer period of time with all the switching that we have to do. I want to talk a little bit about the series When Phones Were Fun, because that's one of my favorite series on your channel, by the way. Thanks, it's so nice kind of throwing it back and kind of looking at some of these iconic devices that were, game changers and as you say, a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
How did that series come about? Because I mean, you started it last year. So
I did.
The first video dropped last year. How did that come about?
Well, it was the beginning of quarantine for us in New York City. We'd gotten a genuine lockdown. We were all trying our best to countenance this new reality that we'd been shoved into. Mm-hmm. And I, like many others, was watching a lot more YouTube and just watching a lot more video and just kind of figuring out what the future looked like. And while I had done a bunch of throwback videos in the past at Pocket Now, at MrMobile, the retro review idea has been around for a long time. I had never seriously considered the idea of packaging them into a series that was updated pretty regularly. Like, used to be the retro review was like, well, we haven't done one of these in 8 months and it's a slow news week. Do you want to just eBay a phone real quick and just do something lazy? Yeah, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
I had never thought about, well, what happens if you pour in all your resources and make a video with as hard, like go as hard, be as much of a try-hard as you are with the regular videos? Well, all right, well, let's try that. And that inspiration came directly from watching a channel called LGR on YouTube, who computing PC and PC history and tech history folks will become instantly familiar with it, but lazy game reviews. And he does videos on old hardware, and he does it very well. And I binged it nonstop for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I said, "This is what I want to do with phones." And I bought that Matrix phone from 2003 from Samsung, and it cost like $1,000 on eBay, and I was like, "This is gonna be a tough thing to." This is going to be a tough thing to justify if this video doesn't do well, so I hope it does well.
Hey.
And thankfully, it came out the gate. People showed up for it. They were here for it, and that justified the next few episodes. I just kept getting rare phones, old phones, whatever, and the manufacturers and the carriers, they all helped out. They were all like, totally. Des from T-Mobile was like, I have 10 sidekicks from the entire like decade. Sidekicks were a thing. Do you want to borrow them? Yes, I do. Motorola was
Amazing.
like, we have a Motorola Aura that you asked for. Yes, please. I'd like to borrow them. Whatever. I had to buy them. I had to borrow them. And dude, I think it was perfect. It was perfect for me. It was perfect for the audience. We all wanted a moment there in April, May, June, where it was like, hey, do you remember when the world was still intact?
Yeah.
And because of the effect of nostalgia, by default, better, even if you cast aside the pandemic stuff, it's like we all want to be in college again or in high school again or whatever. The simpler time. It's all very fictional, but it's true in our heads. It was better then. No, it wasn't, but okay. And it's just a fun little field trip. It's a fun little 10 minutes where we can talk about old phones, and it's my favorite series to make. So I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can.
I mean, it comes across, and it's great to see the success of it as well. But it's so nice seeing that throwback, and
Thanks,
as you were saying, the effort that you put into the videos, and you throw everything at it as you would do on a brand new device, right? And and that comes across. And speaking of that, your videos. So there's so much tech content out there, right? And everybody's making so much great content, but I think your videos really do stand out, especially when it comes to reviews and your style of production, and everything's very concise, and something that I really like.
Thanks, man.
I want to know a little bit more about the process of a MrMobile video, because I know this is something that a lot of other viewers will want to, and listeners will want to know as well. What goes on behind a MrMobile video, like from start to finish?
Sure, from start to finish. Yeah. So it hasn't changed much over the past 5 years, which in one respect isn't great. I should be evolving a little bit more rapidly. I'm feeling a little stagnant within the formula. So thankfully, 2020 also offered the ability to kind of experiment with some new things. But by and large, the typical MrMobile review starts with a script, which is very similar to, if you read the script, it's kind of like an article, like from my blogging days at Pocket Now. It's very much like that format of like, this is how a phone review or a watch review or a laptop review, this is how I write that. And from the script, I then develop a shot list, which tells me all the things I need to shoot to get total coverage for what I want. I then shoot that shot list, which just takes for frickin' ever. It is my probably my least favorite element of the process is the actual filming, because the minute quarantine started and I wasn't in the studio, I had to rely on natural light. Oh, okay. Well, that means I can only shoot for a certain part of the day, and weather.
Yeah.
And are there leaves on the tree? Because that affects this. I can't shoot in this whole corner of the room for 3 months. Okay, well, fine. Come over here. And it's the thing I'm least good at. So it takes the longest. Anyway, film it, and then I edit it, which is my favorite thing to do. In college when I was studying acting, I always looked over into the edit bay of the Stables Theater, and I'm like, there's a bunch of guys sitting at computers there with complicated looking software. I don't know. That's wizard magic. I don't ever need to learn how to do that. And when you learn it, it's like, this is amazing. This is where the story comes together. This is how you weave the thing, and you match stuff to music, and it's like you're dancing with software. In particular, if you use Final Cut, because Adobe Premiere still seems to me to be a whoa.
I'm not going to defend Adobe Premiere, even though I do use it. I use it because of necessity, right? I don't use it because of choice, but yeah, it's necessity.
One of my favorite Adobe Premiere moments was asking David Amell to play something in full screen because he was editing something. He's like, oh yeah, let me get that in full screen for you. And it 16 steps later, it's playing in full screen. I'm like, you can't just, okay, you know what? Never mind. We won't get into it. And then, finally the edit polish is done. Ideally, all of these steps, man, take place over a couple days. And I think I want to say this. This is really important to me because most industries suffer from this is harder than it looks syndrome. Because people will say, you know, when I'm in a YouTube premiere or something, they'll say, "Oh my God, is this live now?" And I'm like, no. You don't understand how much work goes into making this. And even when each of these steps only takes one day, usually when I hit publish, and maybe you can relate to this, I'm in some way not satisfied with it. Ideally, you know, I always want more time at each step for the writing. It is so helpful to write it, then go to sleep, come back and edit it. And at every phase of the process, you know, I'm always refining it. And my best videos are ones where I've had the most time to film in different locations, to write after a couple days of rethinking and gathering new information, to edit over a couple days so that it's not a 12-hour slog in front of the computer when you just want to be done with it by the end of it. You know, it's just a bottomless it's a bottomless hole of time and often money to make these things. And I think a lot of people don't realize how hard it is. And that's why I'm down to 1.5 videos a week is my average now, from a high of 2.5 back in the day. Because, man, when you're making a video that's crap just to meet an upload schedule, well, that sucks. That sucks for everybody, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does. And it's quality over quantity. And I think that's something on your channel why people keep coming back. It is for that quality.
Thank you, man. I hope so. And I will continue our sponsorship of The Unlocker by saying, I swear, I feel like people must be like, how much does David pay you? But one of my other favorite series that I launched last year was basically just taking inspiration from David Kogan's Real World Test series, where he takes devices out into the real world and basically does a vlog. He's like, here's a day in the life, and we're going to hang out. And because he's Kogan, you know, we get to go to fun coffee shops and fun restaurants and stuff. And I was like, David, let's hang out. Like we hang out every day anyway. I want to rip off your format in my own way and use a smartphone camera to document a whole lot of outside stuff. And I just can't wait to get back to doing that, man. That's the real fun new thing for me.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm going to take a bit of credit for this for Kogan's format because.
Here's the other layer. What happened? This was we started this because I wanted to do it. I think it was with the P30 Pro or was it the P20 Pro, the Huawei P20 Pro. So this is talking 2-3 years ago. Kogan was in London, right? So I was just like, okay, I need to do this video, right? And I want to do a day in the life. You know, a little bit of inspiration of that came from Jedna, from Your Average Consumer. Your Average Consumer. Had great format.
Yeah, because I was like, I'm in the studio all the time, but I never have anybody to kind of film with me, right? So I'm like, Kogan. So then Kogan came over here to Leicester, to my home. You're more than welcome to come here if you ever want to visit. It's not. I mean, he came at a really good time because it was. We went over to. It's one of the top 10 parks in the UK. There's deers, there's old castles. It's amazing. But anyway, we went out there. We did a day in life, but he was kind of like helping me shoot. So he was like my video guy. And I'd like to think that somewhat influenced his real world tests somewhat.
It almost certainly did. It almost certainly did, right? And I think it's so important. That's another thing that doesn't get talked about often enough, which is one of the reasons I do call him out all the time, because, you know, occasionally I will be given credit for something. It's like, oh, how did you ever think about this? And it's same thing with LGR and the real world test, LGR and the When Phones Were Fun thing. Like, usually the inspiration I'm getting comes from other YouTubers, whether they're friends of mine or whether I'm just fans. And there's so much of that recycling and repurposing of creative content that happens, whether you're talking about YouTube, TV, movies. You know, I feel like the better, whenever I've gotten better at something, it's usually as a result of watching someone else do something that I either haven't done or haven't done well. And saying, I want to do that. That looks like fun. Let me try it. And it's great to know that Kogan may have been inspired by you in that way. I would you should have him on the show because I want to hear that origin story a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I do need to get him on. I mean, he's so Kogan's pretty rubbish in terms of he doesn't like phone calls and he doesn't like video calls. So we message occasionally. I used to be exactly the same, and it's just Thunder is he's an old school guy. He picks up the phone and he calls you. And I remember the first time when I didn't really know him that well, he called me up and I was like, "Why is this guy calling me up for?" And then we had a conversation, and now he's managing a lot of my partnerships, and we pretty much speak every day, which is why he naturally became the co-host of the podcast.
Of course.
But yeah, it's totally in terms of the inspiration. Obviously, we all do different things, and by working together and watching each other's content, I'm inspired by a lot of your content, a lot of Marquez, a lot of Lou, so many different creators. And I know I mentioned Jedna from Your Average Consumer, and
Yes.
and I think inspiration is key, and that's what like helps everyone kind of progress, because you get inspired by something, you do it in your own way, and you take it forward. Obviously, there's also those who just literally look at something and just make an exact copy of it.
That's different. That's not laudable.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's not
terrible.
an inspiration. But yeah, no, I mean, in terms of the inspiration, I mean, yeah, totally. And there's so many great content creators out there, which we all pick up stuff from. But yeah, I mean, that's interesting to hear your process, and obviously how you're changing it up as well. Are you still doing pretty much all of that yourself from start to finish?
Yeah, pretty much. The writing to the shooting to the editing, it's all a one-man shop pretty much. There are exceptions. I have a sales team which handles a lot of my sponsorship stuff, even though I'm still doing the point of contact on that. It's the sales team is doing the paperwork. And then my thumbnails are designed, which I've just loved my thumbnails from day one. The design we adopted for MrMobile in terms of a visual aesthetic was done by a collaboration between myself, Kevin Mitchell, who helped me launch the channel, and David Lundblad. Those guys are now doing by the way, a health supplement called Future Proofer, which I take every day, and it's a good time. Or Future Proof, I think it's futureproofer.com. Anyway, and the thumbnails are actually built by a man named Jose Negron. He is in Florida, and he's tremendous. He's a super genius. Because do you know what, Saf? I'm ashamed to admit this, but I will. I don't know how to use Photoshop.
Oh.
I spend most of my life in Final Cut Pro. I love editing video. I edit photos in preview like a 6-year-old. So, Jose built.
No, I mean, totally. Because, I mean, this is the thing. Because I think we all have... with myself, I kind of see myself as a jack of all trades. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not the best at anything, because like I think you kind of have to be as a YouTuber, right?
You kind of have to do so many things.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So for me, the thumbnail side of thing is my fun thing. So you know how you said with editing, how everything kind of flows together. For me, it's the thumbname, right? And the social content that I do.
It shows so much, dude. All your Instagram stuff, like every single time. I'm just like, when you first, I'm trying to think of the first time I ever thought, oh, Jesus, Saf belongs in this like social first, visual first kind of space. And I think it was when you started making your hanging from the selfie camera punch out
yes.
Because you had done great work before then, but I had never seen it like as something iterated as quickly or done as effectively as that. And I was like, yeah, if you just keep putting yourself on things in an interesting way, like I will always tune in for that no matter what channel it's on. And so obviously,
thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I mean, for me, it's just like because I do enjoy video, but a lot of that. I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well. For me, it does get a little bit repetitive sometimes with the whole phone review comparison thing, right? It's just like, okay,
totally.
It's so for me, the creative outlet, right? Because I mean, I generally, I don't mind editing, but I generally don't enjoy it as much. Whereas for me, my creative outlet is thumbnails and social content. That's where I can just like go crazy and just go completely out there and just think, okay, what am I going to do today? And just come up with, and sometimes I'll spend, a lot longer on a thumbnail and maybe an asset that I'm going to be using as part of a video, whether that be a wallpaper or an animation, than the actual video itself, because it's a lot more fun for me, right?
Because it's what you love doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be great to just live in a world where you can do that? You can lean into that as hard as you want and really focus on that, and then farm out the stuff you don't like as much to other people who aren't just there because they're there, but are there because they are as passionate about those things as you are, kind of dismissive of them. That's my ideal world. That's what I'm trying to look at doing for the next 5 years or so, is like, look, I'm happy to be the one-man shop at this particular pace right now, but what is next? Do we grow this or not? And if we don't, then well, then what else am I going to do? Because I just can't. No one should stay in one spot, right? You got to evolve. You have to do the shark swimming forward thing. So yeah, I've been preoccupied with that a lot over the last year. Do you have people who help you out with anything at all?
So I have so in terms of like partnerships, he usually manages those and the day-to-day emails because I really don't have time for those. And my brother works with me. He generally kind of looks after the whole business side of things in terms of accounting and all the rest of it. But in terms of the actual video production and the creative process, that's all me. And that's something that, he always tells me because you need to hire somebody that's going to, and I'm like, I'm looking into it, looking at potentially getting an office space first so then I can actually, instead of working from home and then maybe getting somebody in, it's going to be a process. I mean, I when I had Marquez on, we were talking about his octopus analogy, right? So he's just
it's a great analogy. Yep.
It is, and I love that, and it was great to capture that in video. But it's just like, okay, you need to start chopping off the arms that are not as precious to you, shall we say? So I mean, you were mentioning earlier on the part of the video making process in terms of getting all the shots, right? A lot of the B-roll. Maybe that's something. I mean, if you had somebody like Emel, who now Marquez has snatched,
bastard.
That guy. So he could get the really sexy B-roll shots and everything, and then it's a case of kind of putting it together, which you enjoy. Maybe, I don't know. So do you think you'll be getting somebody at some point?
Yeah, what sucks is it's not like I haven't tried. We've another thing people don't get, not just about YouTube, but about our specific flavor of YouTube, man, is that it is so hyper specialized. I have worked with some folks who are incredibly talented creative people, whether they're writers, editors, or cinematographers. And I want to make that entirely clear. These are not people who are bad at any of those jobs. They're very good at it. You look, their reels, their work speaks for itself. But the work they were able to do for me, at least when I was working with them, it took so long to get them used to what filming a phone is like, or filming a smartwatch, or filming it's like you almost need someone who's great at commercials. And to be very clear, I don't make commercials. Obviously, we've talked about this endlessly, but you want the video to be appealing, even if it's a bad review of a product. Even if the conclusion is like, look, don't buy this. It's not good. It's not worth it. The video still needs to look good, so the viewer is having a good time learning why the product isn't any good. And in order to do that, a cinematographer or an editor has to be really good at knowing what this format is, what this flow is like, and what I need to stand out while also fitting in. It's an almost impossible set of criteria, and that's why it just has never been a long-term thing. I'm just like, you know what? I'll just do it myself. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're really great, but I can't use you. I have to go back to doing this. This
is exactly the thing that I have as well. But it's interesting. I can't believe I was either speaking to Marquez or Sarah Dici about this, right? And they were saying that this specific set of skills that you have to have, right? If you have those, you are a YouTuber yourself, right?
Yes,
exactly. So this is the thing. It's just like it's crazy because it is very, very specific, and I think one of the reasons why a lot of us have been successful is because when you're starting up, especially, you can't hire people to do all of these different things. You kind of have to do it all yourself. So you have to be somewhat of a jack of all trades, right? And
totally.
You might not be. So with myself, I'm not the best videographer. I'm not the best reviewer. I'm not the best in many of the things. But I kind of do most of these things okay enough to put them all together in one place.
First of all, you're being harder on yourself than you need to be, but I get entirely what you're talking about. Every time I'm just like, this light isn't right, this focal length isn't right, the background, none of this is right. I can spend 2 hours fixing it, or I can just shoot it and depending on the day, sometimes it goes one way or the other. But you get good enough at it to deliver an end product that more people want to watch than want to thumbs down. Yeah, and it is from there. It just either escalates or you find another line of work.
I mean, I think Marquez has done a really good job because most of his team, like, they also have their own channels. So obviously we've got Emel, we've got Brandon, we've got Vin. A lot of his team, they kind of have their own sort of channels as well. So I think he's got the right idea, because he's kind of got these he's found these guys, and obviously being somebody like Marquez, they want to work with him. Why not?
Of course. Who wouldn't? Yeah.
But yeah, and he's also encouraging them to make their own content as well, which is again a really good way to kind of
to talk about the ultimate management win. It's just like so many times, even the very short amount of time where I was ever managing anyone in a MrMobile context, which was a disaster because I'm a bad boss. That is not one of my strengths. I know this now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, don't manage people, because your impulse is always to be like, are you doing something right now for the business? Is this good for the company? And if you're not, well, then it's like, even if I have no work for you to do, I kind of want you to be doing work, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. But until you're sitting in the boss's chair and you're like, how are we justifying this expenditure for your salary? Like, you don't realize how alluring it is to do that thing where you're just like, please work on something. But no, if there's nothing to be worked on, no, just go better yourself, and it'll better us both eventually. But of course, when you're Marquez, or you've got the resources to do that.
It's really interesting that you mentioned this as well, because we were in a clubhouse and there was Maddie, who's from Canada, and he works with Peter McKinnon sometimes, and he's got his channel and is a really awesome creator, and he works with his brother, right? And he was just saying that after they finish a shoot, his brother kind of gets on with stuff, and he's just like packing stuff away or setting the next shot without him having to tell him what to do next, right? And this is the thing, I think, like, with my brother as well, when I'm working with him, it's like I don't need to really tell him what to do next. Like, he's already on to the next thing in terms of, okay, we need to find a space for this, or we need to sort something out about the Tesla, and he's already onto it without me having to tell him. And I think a lot of that, I was having a conversation with one of my old friends, and I was just like, if you find somebody that does that, then they are running their own company, or they are a YouTuber themselves, right? So it's a case of kind of like just letting go sometimes.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is, you're right. That's the flip side of what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like, those people are so seemingly rare, for a host of reasons. But yeah, if you find someone who will not complete a shot, and then while you think about what you need next, just kind of sit there on their phone or kind of just wait for you. It's like, man, it's like, and I think the hazard there is that, like, in 5 or 10 years, like, that kind of person is going to be replaced by a robot, like, legit. It's already, you can already buy cameras that will follow you around based on a little armband that you wear. Like, we're not too far away from, like, I don't need that. I need someone who will proactively not do the work for me. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying what you said. Like, think about what's next. Think about what we're trying to do here, and then work with me to accelerate me in that direction. Let's be better together. And it's funny. It's like, I wouldn't continue to use that person in a freelance capacity. I would not abuse that. If I ever found that, I would just be like, oh wow, okay, no, you're right. Also, can you work with me forever? Because I have a budget for that. So let's build this together now.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, it's rare.
Totally. Well, maybe we'll catch up in a few months or a year's time, and then you would have found somebody, and we can talk about that person at some point. I want to talk a little bit about, because one of the things that I really like about your videos, and I know you've talked about this on a little bit on Marquez's podcast, but I want to explore it a little bit more. What I really like about your videos is how transparent you are and how you disclose any partnerships with any brands, any review units, loan units, and things like that. And we were talking about being inspired, and I know this also was inspired from somewhere else. But can you tell us a bit more about how this all came about? Because I think it's almost become like a sort of benchmark of what to follow in terms of disclosure for a tech YouTuber.
Thank you. Yeah, well, credit first where it's due. That came that format of that disclosure came from a channel called Lon.tv. Lon Seidman, whose last name I think I'm pronouncing correctly, and I was like, oh my god, it's so simple. And the reason it struck me that hard was because for literally years I had been trying to figure out a way to tell people what my content was, because really, dude, the landscape has so many flavors of it. It's kind of a mess if you're a viewer and you're like, and to be clear, I am not against fully sponsored content in any way. What I was against for a while was people trying to get away with it. People hanging out in the same space as reviewers, calling something a review when it was literally a paid commercial. If it's a paid commercial, call it a paid commercial. And if it's a good commercial, it'll stand on its own, and it's fine. It deserves to exist. But having something that came in and snuck in, it drove me nuts. And that combined with so many things of like we would attend these press events as journalists. And sorry, I'm not a journalist. I didn't go to J school. I can't use that word. I think that word's important. As a pseudo-journalist, as a pretend journalist, as media, right? As earned content creators who are not getting paid, who are just showing the viewers something new. We would attend these press events where we would pay our own way and pay for our hotel and all this kind of stuff. And I'd be sitting on the plane next to an influencer who got paid and is in first class. So I wasn't sitting next to him, I was sitting behind him. And is in first class getting paid in 5-figure amounts at the time to make a commercial for the thing that I was covering for free, and they're growing 6 times as fast as I am. And I said, this cannot be. I will not be lumped into the same category as this person, and I need to tell people what's happening with this. So, I didn't want to do an expose. I didn't want to do a call out thing. I didn't want to start drama because God, can you imagine anything worth someone's time less than starting drama with other YouTubers? What a dismal existence that must be. And so I said, no, I'm just going to say at the end of my videos, look, this is it. Huawei flew me to Europe and put me in a hotel, and I covered their phone. They didn't pay me, but that's the amount of influence they may have had. Nobody said what I could say. Nobody looked at this early. Nobody, otherwise affected the content in that way. And if you think that my, hotel stay or flight jeopardizes my perspective too much, then that is why I'm telling you this. Take it for what it is worth, and if it's worth less to you as a result of that, then that is fair. But you just need to know. And, just like when you're doing a sponsorship, right? It's just like when I do that Oral-B ad on Instagram, it's like, this is an ad. This is commercial copy. Take that as you will. If you want, it's like it's so simple, and yet for so many years it just wasn't happening, right? Let's just be honest.
It's done really well, and I think, as I said, like having seen that, I need to kind of implement that into my videos as well. I don't do sponsored reviews. I have done a few sponsored full videos, such as unboxings, because I'm not actually giving my opinion on a product. I'm just showing you the way I kind of see an unboxing is a compressed format of a 2-hour presentation with somebody, with a lot of marketing. It's like, I'm going to compress this into 8 minutes and give you everything you need to know about smartphone, and or whatever product it might be. And if that's sponsored for me, it's just like, I'm not giving you my opinion. If I'm going to do a review of this product, that will be non-sponsored, and that's going to be coming later on if I'm doing a comparison. However, having said that, I do get asked pretty much on a daily basis to do a sponsored review. So clearly, there are people out there doing sponsored reviews, and I have seen media packs of people where it actually says sponsored review. Obviously, we're not going to call anybody specific out. But what do you think of sponsored reviews?
It's a two-part answer. It's a two-part answer, and the first part is, look, I love that you called out the way you do unboxings in a sponsored capacity, right? Because there are so many different ways to do things. Like if, as a YouTube consumer, if one of my favorite YouTubers does a sponsored video on something I'm interested in, and I watch it with the full understanding that it is a paid for thing, and I'm watching it in that context, there's nothing wrong with it. I think the only content category that really should never exist is that it's a sponsored review or a sponsored comparison, which in some cases is even worse, because what you're saying then is, you're leveraging the SEO power of the word review, which is just dirty because you're stealing views from me, who's actually reviewing the thing. And second, your review, quote unquote, is being reviewed by the company that is paying you before you publish, so that they can make sure that you say that that people should buy it, essentially.
Yeah.
And I just can't get behind that format at all. I think those should be illegal. In many countries they are. Right?
Yeah. It's crazy how many people get away with it though, and this is the thing. I mean, like the comparison thing. I always get. Can you do a sponsored comparison? And it's like, no, that's not how it works. I cannot do a sponsored comparison. If your product I think is worthwhile to compare to another device, I will do it organically. But yeah, I mean that's one thing that I have done full sponsor videos, but I totally agree with you. In my personal, I mean, I've seen some reviewers who have. Said that they do sponsored reviews, but that's to prioritize the content from everything else that they're doing. So they're like, we're going to still give our honest opinions on the product, but what you're paying for is the prioritization of us doing your video, covering your product honestly, without... Now, that still is a little bit of a gray area for me because you're still getting paid, so there's still going to be quite a bit of influence or somewhat of an influence on that product. What do you think?
That's interesting. I was so tempted by that model back when I was at Pocket Now. I think we were kind of brainstorming on ways to do sponsored content, and I was like, well, it is interesting. If you just think about it, if the company, in an ideal world, the company does not have any control or preview of the content, they don't have any editorial input whatsoever. If they're paying you to put in your review into the queue, either at all, if you weren't going to cover it at all, or just prioritize it so it goes earlier than it otherwise would. It's seductive because it's almost okay to my brain. It's almost like, okay, well, and look, and if you do that and you disclose that that's what you're doing, then it's of course okay because you're not lying to anyone. You're just making a business decision based on how you run your channel. I think one of the things, the hinky part about it for me is one of the things that's always been important about the things I put in front of people on the channel, with very few exceptions. It's like, I'm showing you this because I'm interested in it, or it is newsworthy in a broad way. Mm-hmm. And when you introduce a paid element, you're creating a third category where you're like, I'm showing you this because I was paid to. Mm-hmm. That's fine. I don't think there's much wrong with it if we're saying what I said a second ago, which is, look, I'm not a journalist. I'm something different, something in between that and an influencer. I think it's not something I would do right now, but I would not say it doesn't get my blood boiling the way that a sponsored review does or lying does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I totally feel you. Now, one of the things, I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen this video from Tom Scott. Who's an amazing creator.
I love him.
He's such an awesome guy.
I've never met him. I would love to meet him.
Yeah, it's lovely. He actually came over to Leicester again. He came over to my house to shoot a little sort of game show that he was working on. This is a couple of years ago, before when we could have people over and things like that. But yeah, such a lovely guy and an amazing content creator, and I absolutely love his stuff. But yeah, that video for me, it just hit the nail on the head. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I'll leave a link in the show notes. But it was essentially talking about the hypocrisy between disclosure when it comes to if you are a online content creator, such as a YouTuber or influencer or whatever you want to call us, or if you are in a mainstream media, television, movies, music videos, etc. And the difference there is just crazy. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
It's striking. It's funny because I never thought about it in that way until first Marquez tweeted about it, and then Tom Scott did the video a number of months later. I got his name right? I just learned his name. I've been watching his videos for years, but I just learned his name. Tom Scott, right?
Yeah, Tom Scott. Yeah, nice and simple.
Sorry, just total brain. Just my brain fell apart. Yeah, I don't know. It's so funny because I kind of grew up knowing that every time there was a brand name on screen in a TV show or a movie that it was obviously sponsored placement. Like, I think it hit a point of saturation in my head by the time I was 10 where it's like, oh yeah, okay, they're using Shasta instead of Pepsi on Saved by the Bell or whatever because they either couldn't reach an agreement to exchange money for that or whatever. So like, I don't know. That doesn't bother me as much as maybe it bothers other folks, but it makes a lot of sense that there should be either more prominent disclosures or the degree of product placement in films should be it should be toned down anyway. It's always obvious. Like you're watching Minority Report and like the video phone from the future is still branded Nokia, or like same thing in Star Trek '09. It's like, what do you?
Yeah.
Come on, guys, this doesn't. You don't need to do this. And Microsoft, you're like, your stuff is never going to be cool as a result of it being featured in a Superman film or whatever. Like, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's some research out there that indicates I'm wrong, but I don't.
I mean, and again, like how it's very difficult to measure something like that as well, isn't it? Like the impact something like that would have. But I do think that there does need to be more disclosure, because there's a lot of pressure on us to be transparent about when we're being paid, which I think is totally fair and should be the case. But I also think that there shouldn't be this double standard.
There is.
It's just like, I mean, it's just, okay, they're the big, powerful production companies who have lots of money. Yeah, they can do whatever they want. And it's just like, okay, the little guys, let's go after them. And that's what I don't like. I don't like that sort of setup. Let's hope it changes.
I agree with you. I will say, though, that like the potential for damage to the consumer, I think, is much greater in our space. Because our space was built on the backs of people essentially saying, like, here's the thing, let me show you it for 6 minutes, and then should you buy it? Let me tell you. And that it was almost instantly taken over. It was captured by the advertising industry and the marketing industry that wanted to say, yes, buy it. Whereas the film industry, it's like, I feel like there's a much lower danger of like, I saw a Microsoft Surface on an episode of this sitcom and now I want to go buy it. It's like, at the worst, like, it's telling more people the product exists. It's like a mind share capture. Whereas I think the violations that exist in our space are much more damaging. So I think that's why the hammer came down harder on us initially.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting perspective. In terms of, like, you mentioned a few words there. You said you're not a journalist, and you also I also heard the term influencer. I always like to ask this to my guests, like, what do you refer to yourself as? Because most people do not like the term influencer.
Right. Yeah, it has a lot of troubling connotations. I'm really glad the catch-all term creator kind of came into the nomenclature a couple of years ago. It's way too broad. It doesn't mean much, but it is at least a thing you can land on when people say, well, what do you do? And you can tell they want a 5-second answer. They don't want a 2-minute long answer. And you're like, well, I make YouTube videos about technology. And then typically they want follow-ups because it is, for the moment, still pretty cool to be a YouTuber, I feel like. So that's, I'm sure you run into this all the time too, right? So yeah, I don't lead with a term now. I kind of go with that phrase, and then we kind of go from there. Or, I really like reviewer. It's such a, that on the flip side, that is such a specific term. And YouTube just happens to be the medium. Dieter Bohn at The Verge was fond of saying for a while, he may still, that he was a product reviewer who happened to make most of his content on YouTube. But he's not a YouTuber, because that's the kind of same influencer, kind of, crooked side, flat bill hat kind of thing. Dumb, not cool sunglasses like yours, but dumb sunglasses. And, there's a lot of, influencer. Hey, so who's going to go to VidCon this year? That kind of thing. Yeah. It's like, not my thing.
There's an interesting few points you mentioned, because like the YouTuber being cool, it's the term YouTuber. So there was a study done, I believe, like a couple of years ago, about the most desired career for kids, right? And in the UK and the US, number one was YouTuber. In China, it was an astronaut, right? So it's you can see there's a big difference there, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So it is something that a lot of people kind of aspire to be, because I guess it's, back in like when we were growing up, there wasn't, obviously, this medium didn't exist, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to be an actor or something like that. But now it's just like the YouTuber, the influencer, the career seems a lot more accessible, because you could be anybody. You could make videos that people like watching, and then you could become a huge success, right? And I think that's what makes it quite desirable for kids, especially.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Because the actor comparison is a good one, because that was what I went to college for. That is what I did, what I tried to do, and You know, those things are interchangeable for about 10 years. And, you know, I was lucky to pay my rent acting and doing voiceover work for a number of years. So it was great. But there was always this thing where you're like, you are an independent contractor legally, but you're kind of a standalone business. You're a one-person business, like you are as a YouTuber. The difference is, as a YouTuber, you and I, as we talked about earlier, we're a one-man shop from ideation to creation to delivery to publication. Like, the whole thing goes through us. When you're an actor, you are 17 levels away from getting your face in front of an audience, and you are in a different kind of competition than we are as YouTubers. So I feel like it makes sense that YouTuber has taken over as the most aspirational title for American kids, because you really do have control over almost every part of the process that matters to getting your stuff out in front of people. I think, though, the common kernel behind all of it tends to be, well, why do you want to be a YouTuber? Oh, well, I want to be famous, because can you imagine anything better than celebrity? And it's like, oh, no. Look, I'm not going to, no fronting. I like being recognized. Anytime I see somebody on the sidewalk says, "Are you MrMobile?" and we have a good chat, it's great. But we're not talking about me. The first 5 seconds are you MrMobile? I love your videos, whatever it is. But then for the next 2 or 3 minutes, we talk about the thing we have in common, which is what? It's phones, or it's tech, or it's laptops.
Yeah.
It's nerding out together about the thing that this is actually about. It's not really about me. It's not really about this. Hang out with Michael. It's about the things. It's about these cool things that, hey, we live in the future. Isn't that fun? Yeah. Buy this or don't buy it. It sucks or it doesn't. That's the thing. That's what I always like to focus on. So I think for anyone going into this field to make themselves a bigger product, I'm like, okay, well,
it's the wrong reason.
Yeah, right. Go into it to celebrate something else, or explore something else, or teach people. You know, there's so many better reasons to be a YouTuber, right?
There is, and that's what I always, advise. It's just like, if you're going into becoming a YouTuber to be rich or famous, then I've seen any successful YouTuber that I know did not go in to become rich and famous, right? They went in because they enjoyed making content and they wanted to get a message out there to as many people as possible. And, those sort of things are what really, teach people something, maybe provide some value. And that's kind of what really I've seen the success stories of. I've never seen somebody's like, I want to be rich and famous, and, who have actually gone ahead. Maybe there's a few exceptions, I don't know. But generally, that's not the case.
Yeah. It's very helpful to keep in mind. And also, we shouldn't discount the people who kind of fall into it. I mean, I certainly didn't know that YouTube was going to be a thing back in 2006 when we were just uploading, my dad and I are uploading 15-second clips of sinking model Titanic videos, just because we're like, let's just share this with other people. Let's just see. See if we get some comments, whatever. And suddenly it's, within 2 years, it's this little business that we have together. It's like, we didn't expect that. We were just screwing around. What do you mean that people want to give us money?
Yeah. So, I mean, looking back, we've mentioned the acting thing a few times, and this is something a lot of people are interested in. And I've seen a few snippets sort of pop up on Twitter as well, right? From your acting days. So you actually studied acting for 10 years, did you say? Yeah,
I studied acting for... so I was in college for longer than most. I went to school for like 7 years. But yeah, I graduated with a BFA in acting from Old Dominion University, my alma mater. And yeah, I started working as an actor while I was still there. And then after I graduated, I worked as an actor for about another 4 or 5 years before tech just took over. I mean, I had to make a choice. It was like, do both of these things and do them increasingly poorly each, or do one thing and do it better. So I chose tech. Yeah.
And you made the right choice, right? do you miss those acting days sometimes?
Sometimes I do. I don't ever regret the choice, because I think one of the things I've been most privileged to say, and by the way, that list is long. I am very, very lucky in terms of my life as a whole. But one of my favorite things that I'm able to say is I am doing the job that I feel I was born to do. Not because I'm the best at it, not because the world needs me, but because I need it so much and I can make a living doing it. And that, when you can say that, I mean, right? It's like...
It's amazing.
Is there anything better than that? I don't know if there is.
There is. I mean, we are very, very fortunate and blessed to do what we do, and I think
Completely.
doing the area that we're in as well. This is something I always talk about. Covering tech is really good because half of our work is done for us, because it's the pressure is on the brands, the companies to come up with new products, and then the other half is for us to present them in an informative and entertaining way, right?
Yes.
But for a lot of other creators who are maybe just doing entertainment or comedy or vlogging or whatever it is, that reliance is on them 100%.
Right.
And that pressure is crazy. So we are very, very fortunate to be able to do what we do.
Very much so. And I think that's what makes it an interesting, weird space as well, because all the work, you're right, is being done by people who, I said on another podcast recently, like, all the engineers who make the stuff that I critique are, just way smarter than I am. They are creating like tangible physical things that go out into the world and do and enable people to do things. I will never stop admiring them. But not only are we creating content that helps people decide whether to buy the things, that's kind of just like just one slice of it. Some people just want to see what the experience of using these things, of existing with them is. And that's the entertainment part. That's the part that I increasingly like more and more. Like, in a way, getting to the finish line of like, should you buy it or not, I've just de-emphasized that so much. I'm just like, if you want that, and it's important, but if you want that, then you're going to skip the end of the video to watch it anyway, and then I could just be making a 30-second video for you. I don't want to do that. I want to spend 10 minutes talking about this, and let's have fun on the way, right?
Yeah, totally. In a way, we've been going on for quite some time, so I've got a couple more things before we.
Sorry, I talk too much. I should have warned you.
No, you don't. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I'm sure the listeners and viewers will enjoy it as well. So one of the things I want to ask about the acting side of things as well is because you said you did a lot of voiceovers as well, and I've seen whenever I have you guesting on the channel, people are like, this is the best voice on YouTube, tech YouTube, at least. All right, okay. Did you have any training for that, or was that just something that just came naturally?
No, I definitely did. I had a ton of training. The BFA program I was in had some wonderful professors who I continue to keep in touch with to this day, and who taught me an awful lot about how to use, my instrument, to be very pretentious and actory about it. And I know I don't always follow that advice. I've fallen out of practice. Actually, as I prepare to start my own podcasts this year, I'm having to go back to some of those professors legit and take lessons again for breath control and for being able to deliver. Because, dude, the videos that I put, like, those voiceover files are not one take. They're awful. They're like, if it's a 13-minute video, the source file for that narration is probably a half hour long. And it is just chopped to death. I mean, even the sentences, they're not contiguous. Excuse me. So, there's a lot of work that goes into that. I also don't recommend this, but I was also like a pack-a-day smoker for a number of years, and that may have shaped the tone that you're hearing. I'm happy to say I have quit a long, long time ago, but don't take up smoking.
Don't do it, kids. So would you recommend, like, for any voice training or anything like that for somebody who's a YouTuber or thinking about becoming a YouTuber?
I think so. I think it matters a lot less because there are people with voices who I've heard people who have annoying voices say that their own voices are annoying, and these people have channels 17 times bigger than mine. You know what I mean? It's like it seems not to matter to as many people as you might otherwise think. No, but I think if it's something you want to prioritize for yourself, if that's the way you want to express yourself and you want to be more satisfied with your content, then it's worth it. But I don't think it's certainly not a necessity, right? Because there's every kind of voice out there. It's incredible, right? From YouTube to public radio to television, like that diversity is what makes it cool.
100%. You mentioned the podcast, your podcast coming up soon. What can you tell us about it at this point? I know there might not be much. You might not want to give too much away, but what can you share with us?
It's not like about protecting a secret so much as like, I think I have an idea that's cool. I tried to write it out a little bit. I had one of those evenings where I'm about to go to bed, but it wouldn't stop going on up in here. So I came down here and it's like in the basement and I'm just cranking away on this script and I'm like, this is great. And then I read it the next day. I'm like, this is crap. Nobody cares. No, nobody's going to care. So I'm still in that stage, but I will tell you that aspirational podcast I want to launch, kind of also just for myself, but because there is risk to it, because it is a different take on the kind of tech podcast format, and it may not take off and it may not do well, I'm going to launch another podcast right alongside it that is more conventional for the people who want like the kind of thing we're doing now, the kind of give and take tech podcast, talk about current events, talk about how to produce the content. Like that is, I want that too, but that's almost an insurance policy for if the A project doesn't work, as it might not, because it might fall right on its face. And I guess unless you're taking a risk, it's not worth doing, maybe. So I guess that's okay. But I'm scared. I'm petrified.
I mean, I'm sure it's going to be successful. I mean, I'm more intrigued on that side rather than just on the tech side. I mean, I still have to, like, on the podcast, I still have to kind of drop the tech stuff because I know, like, the base of the audience is still interested in that sort of base tech stuff. But again, like, I try to mix it up. And one of the things that I mix it up with when we go towards the end of the podcast are a few little things which we will now get onto. I'm super excited about the podcast. Really looking forward to it. Do you know any sort of rough time when we might be seeing it coming? A few months away?
As far as this pipeline goes, there's a lot more writing that goes into it than any previous podcast I've run, which was one. It was the Pocket Now Weekly. It needs a lot of prep time. So I think fall at the absolute earliest, and more likely early winter of 2021.
Early winter. All right.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited. Really. I mean, the whole podcast space is quite new to me, but I'm really enjoying it.
Can I say that I'm so glad that you are doing it, because your voice, you've given me too many compliments today. Your voice, sir, is outstanding. And I've always said that, and I always love hearing it. And I was like, when you started this podcast, I think my first reaction was, well, it's about freaking time. What took you so long? It's so obvious. Of course, do a podcast, Sav. Everybody wants to hear it. It's great. I'm so glad it's going well, too.
I appreciate it. I mean, it was like me and E would always be talking about lots of things, whether that be current events, tech, but also just, doing what we do. There's a lot of people who are aspiring to be YouTubers, content creators, and kind of just exploring some of the behind the scenes of that, right? So
sure,
it's been fun just talk, because a lot of this stuff wouldn't work on the main channel, and that's thanks to YouTube and the way the algorithm works, which is a whole other conversation. But this kind of allows us to be a bit more sort of open and relaxed and just talk about whatever we want to talk about rather than what we have to talk about.
It's great, and it can ramble and it can fill time and just kind of let all these ideas out for a little bit of air, which is so necessary. Everyone's like, make a video on this. I'm like, I don't have the time, and I can't film that much B-roll. This has to be a podcast.
As a podcast, and this is what the podcast has been, and it's been a lot of fun. Right. Yeah. So with all my guests, I there's this little fun section that I do towards the end. And the question I want to ask you first is, have you Googled yourself recently?
Oh, not recently. I think I do it twice a year.
Okay.
No. Why?
All right. So I have done the honors for you, and it's interesting to know what people want to hear, because you kind of mentioned that if you meet somebody and you kind of chat, and then it goes around to what you do rather than Michael Fisher himself, right?
Yeah.
What do you so let's now see what people are most interested in with your top search terms for your name, right? So what people really want to know about MrMobile, Michael Fisher, right? Now, I want to kind of, I always give this disclaimer. This is not coming from me. This is from Google. So this is what people want to hear, not what I want to hear. But also, if you want to answer them, the top search terms, then please feel free to do so, but be under no pressure. I obviously don't expect you to answer all of them if you don't wish to. You can just give your reaction. If
Michael Fisher net worth $14 million. Yeah, sounds good.
Close. Okay, so what do you think your first search result is? Related search result.
So is it for Michael Fisher?
So Michael Fisher. So what I've actually done
generic,
is
right?
Because they are quite like you get a lot of other stuff. So what I've done is I put in Michael Fisher and then MrMobile, and then we've got a bunch of search terms that have come up.
Got it.
Specifically for you. So it's nobody else. It is just yourself. So what do you think the first one is?
Michael Fisher, MrMobile. I mean, it's got to be something generic, right? It's got to be Michael Fisher, MrMobile, YouTube.
No.
It's not.
I think it's going to be quite a bit of a surprise. This is the first most searched term for Michael Fisher, MrMobile.
I'll guess once more. Well, no, go ahead. No,
please.
I was going to guess because net worth is always way up there, so that would be my guess.
So that's actually not number one. It is there, but it's not number one.
Okay, what is it?
Wife. Believe it or not.
You are kidding me. Really?
Michael Fisher, MrMobile wife, is the number one suggested search term on Google.
Wow. That's crazy to me because my audience is so like my audience is so male centric, tech centric. Like it's not there's okay, interesting. How about that? I am not married. I will say that.
Okay.
But my girlfriend and I have been together for a very long time.
Okay.
And we have survived quarantine together, so that should tell you something about the relative health of our relationship.
Congratulations.
Thank you. She's not seen very often because she doesn't necessarily want to be. She's not. If there is a type of person who chases the public eye, she is the opposite of that kind of person. So.
Okay.
I keep her out of the content as much as she requests to be out of the content, which is pretty much all the time.
Okay. So that's answered for the number one search term. The next one is something that you predicted, which is net worth. That's pretty common for all of us. Reactions to that, obviously, I don't expect. I don't even know my net worth, so I wouldn't expect you to know or share that. But what are your reactions to?
It's funny. I don't know mine either, right? Because you have to calculate your belongings and your income and your stocks, which I don't own any, which is stupid. But my only reaction to that is that every time I have Googled the net worth thing, and then like you see those websites that exist just to like deliver those that information, and it's like holy shit.
Really?
Could not. Right. And on both sides of it too. Like some of them, but most of them highball it. Like some of them lowball it, and I'm like. And
really?
But most of them are, because most of them are just like, what most of the internet thinks I make would result in me living in, like, on a massive mega yacht, and I'm like, I'm very comfortable, thank you, but no, no.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The next one is we'll go on the top 5. So the next one is MrMobile age.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, I didn't wear my SuperSaf sunglasses, so you can tell I'm an ancient man. Actually, this is why I like using the crappy webcam on most laptops, because it really does youthen me up with the reduced resolution. You get a little higher.
Is it like the beauty filters on Huawei phones? How
exactly. Or the like fixed focus, right? So you get it slightly out of focus, and you're
slightly
like, "That's it." Oh, that's the look. That's what I mean. Yeah, I am in my mid-30s. I will say that. I think that's another Googleable thing where it's like instantly discoverable. There's no reason for me not to say it. So I'll just say it. I think it's even on IMDb. It's funny. I was about to get it wrong too. Oh God, I just had a birthday. Saf, I'm 38. I'm 38 years old. Do you believe it?
No, I would have guessed the early 30s.
Well, thank you. I just collapsed a little deeper into my chair for those listening. I'm just like, oh God, you reminded me. I did have a fun experience. Yeah, getting my vaccine though the other day, I had a fun experience. She was like, "Are you an essential worker? Have you been in contact? Do you have symptoms?" I'm like, No. She's like, "Then what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Wait, don't do this to me. I drove a long way to get the shot. I'm over 30." And she's like, "Oh, you're over 30? Oh, you don't look it." I'm like, "Oh, wow. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that."
Amazing. And congratulations on getting the vaccine. I'm still waiting for mine. I'm still under the category, so hopefully at some point soon.
good. Soon, man. It will just hang in there, and it feels so great. Even though I'm only halfway done, I feel like there's finally a finish line, and I'm so stoked.
Hopefully soon. The next two, so we've got MrMobile Wiki. So I guess people are looking for a Wikipedia page based on yourself.
Yeah, I'm really bummed out. I'm bummed out. One doesn't exist, and also, like, there's a YouTube dedicated wiki. Do you know what it, like, WikiTube or something like that? Is that what it is?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've come across it.
Yeah, there's one where, like, other people have entries and I don't, and I'm sad. I wish somebody would make me a Wikipedia page, but I don't have one.
Okay, so hint, nudge, nudge, if anybody's listening and has an expertise in making Wikipedia pages, then go ahead and make one for MrMobile. And the fifth...
Wait, yeah. You do?
Yeah, I do.
I gotta look that up. Good for you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I don't know how it works because I think Google has like a listing on you, and then you have it kind of pulls in a lot of data from yourself, and then it's like if somebody decides to kind of put together a Wikipedia page based on. I think it mostly works on articles. So if you are featured in a lot of articles, so whether that be interviews, awards, things like that, then it kind of like, oh, this person's notable, or this person is somebody that deserves having a Wikipedia page, or I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, you have a good page. I noticed that your birth date doesn't have a year on it, though. You have successfully sidestepped that.
So I have a theory that I try to keep a lot of stuff kind of disconnected. So if you search for me on Google, all sorts of stuff will come up. But I try to keep that kind of like, I want to leave a bit of mystery behind the sunglasses, shall we say?
That makes sense.
So it is, but
reasonable.
But some of the stuff on there is just funny because I've come across articles about me and my background, and my parents and all sorts, and it's completely wrong. It's just like I'm not sure who this article is about, but it's not me because this stuff is completely and utterly just made up. But it's funny. It's funny. But yeah, it's nice to have a bit of mystery on there. The last two that we've got, the top six, so we've got Actor and IMDb. So people are quite interested to, maybe come across some of your old clips.
I'm glad to hear that. So much of it is, I think people don't realize about being an actor that while I've been on, like, I think it's only like 2 or 3 TV shows maybe, I've done so much film work that you will never see. Film, sorry. I've done so much video work that you will never see. And it's not, everyone typically then goes to, well, how many, you did a lot of porn, did you? I was like, no. There's a whole category in between that. And in addition to the commercials that sometimes do pop up, a great amount of the income you will make as a freelance actor, at least in the markets I existed, which was Virginia, Boston, and then New York, is industrial films. They're training videos. Okay. These are videos that if you get hired by a big corporation, they will make you watch, and they're always, not very fun to watch. But where it's like, this is a human resources video. Now you're going to watch a 5-minute scene. Watch, Mark enter the office and start an inappropriate conversation. Now choose the option that he should have said. And it's like, those, while they are not very fun to watch, they were A, very well paying as an actor. I loved doing those because they put food on the table. And B, this one production company I often worked with got kind of hip to the fact that I was bored by being the square white guy in the office. So they cast me in all the roles that called for a guy who was doing everything you shouldn't do at the office.
All right, mix it up.
And that was in 2011, and to this day, I still get people about once a month on Twitter saying, "Hey, MrMobile, I just started my training for this new job, and is this you? Is this you bragging about how drunk you got at the company party and then throwing furniture in the pool at the boss's house?" I'm like, "Yep, that's me." I'm happy to say it.
Amazing. I see some of those tweets pop up now and then. Last sort of thing that I want to touch on. You are obviously a big StarTrek fan.
Oh, you bet, man. I got all these badges on the wall. You can't see; they're out of frame. But I'm surrounded by Star Trek stuff at all times.
Yeah. So I am not huge on Star Trek. I've watched the movies, the recent ones, and I really
You
enjoyed
went
them.
to the premiere. You went to the Beyond premiere, didn't you?
I went to the Picard premiere.
The Picard premiere. That's what it was.
With Amazon
Oh,
Prime. Yeah, you were
so
very jealous. I remember.
I was so jealous. I'm sitting in my house. I'm pacing in circles. I'm like, why don't I needed to get invited? Damn it. Well, at least Saf is nice, and I can't hate him for it.
Well, if somebody that's new to Star Trek, what would you say to them to get excited and interested into watching?
It's so tricky because there are so many flavors of Star Trek, and they're suitable for all different personality types. I watch it all and value it all in one way or the other. A lot of it is great. A lot of it is not very good. These are the things that happen when you have 800 hours of broadcast content. But I typically tell people, look, if you don't mind watching a show from the 90s, and it oozes 90s out of every pore of its existence, watch something, go to Netflix or wherever, pick something from the third season of Star Trek The Next Generation. It's very important.
Okay.
Third season.
That season.
And one of these things, one of these stories will capture you in the way it is told and the underlying narrative. Because on the surface, yeah, it's a show about spaceships and aliens and phasers, right? But there is always, on the best of Star Trek, there's always something right underneath, which is a story about the human condition. It's a story about how we treat other people, how we should treat other people, and how we should approach life to try to be better. And I think that no version of Star Trek has ever really done that better than season 3 and 4 of Star Trek The Next Generation. So that's where I would point most people.
I will try to check that out. Is there anything recent, any recent new TV shows that have really captured your attention?
Yeah, Star Trek Discovery is and Picard, they're the most recent series. I think they do a great job of trying to cater to that same, their heart's in the right place.
Yep.
I feel that older Star Trek did a better job of of showing, not telling.
Yeah.
And modern Star Trek very often falls into the trap of, hey, now we're going to have a character monologue for a minute about how great they are because they hold to their values and their ideals. And the old Star Trek didn't need to do that. It's very performative with the modern Star Trek. So I think that's kind of the trap. That said, look, it's great. And it's also pushing a lot of boundaries that old Star Trek couldn't or wouldn't. And I respect and appreciate that, because there's a lot of people who were not represented in old Star Trek that are now. And that's awesome. There is no more Star Trek ideal than that. And that's great.
Mm-hmm. What about outside of Star Trek? Are there any shows that particularly stand out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to do a double. If anybody heard the Android Central podcast this week, I called this out on that one too. But there's a show that AMC did called Halt and Catch Fire. Have you heard of it?
I have not. I'm going to have to check it out.
Please do. This is not an accurate description, but it's as accurate as I've ever heard. Mad Men, but in the computer revolution of the 1980s. It is a kind of workplace drama / it's a drama. It is set against the backdrop of the computer revolution, but these characters, for 4 years, they don't ever stop growing. And if you don't like the first season, stick with it, because it's a different show every season with the same characters.
I'm going to have to check it out. I've never been much of a TV show watcher, but then I recently got into The Expanse, and I watched it from start to finish.
Great science fiction.
The season.
Yes.
Amazing. Absolutely loved it.
I strongly agree. That was one of those sponsorships that came around where I think I did an Instagram post for Amazon to promote one season of The Expanse. And when I got the email, I literally said, "Are you kidding me? You're going to pay me to say things that I would say otherwise?" Yes, I will do this post. What a wonderful series. I credit my girlfriend with introducing me to that, because she read the books and she said, we have to watch this together. And
so
incredible
awesome.
show.
Absolutely love
Great
it. I'm looking forward to season 5, hopefully toward the end of this year. So that's something that's going to be quite exciting. Man. On the topic of The Expanse, I'm going to ask you a very random question, because I'm very much into space and science. All right.
Yeah.
Do you think there's life on other planets? Completely random, out there question.
I think that given the actual math involved, given the sheer number of stars out there, the sheer number of galaxies, let alone stars, if you were to tell me that none of the planets orbiting those stars, none of them in the universe also support intelligent life, I would say, look, Do the math again. It's just not possible. I would be stunned if we were alone. And I mean it. I'm stunned. Just in terms of probability, it doesn't seem likely.
Okay, here's a follow-up question to that. Do you think we, as humans on Earth, will ever interact or come across any other life forms?
My gut is not anytime soon, because as much as many stars as are out there, and as vast as that space is, it's a big place, and we haven't figured out any way to get outside of, not even outside of our neighborhood, outside of our front door, in any kind of speed that would be required to go meet any of these folks. So no, I don't think. Well, not ever. Sure, someday. Certainly not anytime soon.
Anytime soon. So I have for me, I have a bit of a theory where it's just like there is life everywhere, right? It's just been placed so far apart that interacting is just, interstellar travel is just impossible, because if we look at the speed limit of the universe, which is the speed of light, obviously, even if we were to somehow manage to find the speed of light, which would be pretty much impossible trying to with something of mass, because to accelerate mass to that level, you'd need an infinite amount of energy,
almost insurmountable energy.
It would still take 4.25 years to get to the Alpha Centauri system, right?
Which closest is the neighbor.
Yeah. And how would you survive for 4.5 years, even if you were to be able to figure out the speed of light?
Even if you were able to figure that out, then you also have to figure out how to avoid the time dilation effect, because by the time you get there, what is it? The time travels much more slowly for you or for us in that case? I forget.
For you, so we would be accelerating. If we were traveling at the speed of light, we would be accelerating. Everybody else would be growing old back there, and we would still be.
So it would be a one-way mission in any case, and also the world you would arrive in would be just advanced forward by so many more years. It's crazy. But let's remember that it was once thought impossible to traverse the oceans. You know what I mean? It was once thought impossible to explore our entire planet. So we will figure it out.
Let's hope so.
Confidence.
Let's hope so.
There's a great documentary called The Farthest, about the Voyager space probe, the farthest human-made object that we've ever sent out. I recommend that if you haven't watched it.
I'm definitely going to check that out. Fisher, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I know we ran over what was scheduled, but I really appreciate you staying on and coming on. And it was just a really fun chat, man.
I strongly agree, man. This was long overdue for us personally, and also I'm honored to be here, really. Thank you. Congratulations on everything you've done, and thanks for pulling it all apart with me for a little bit here. And I feel good. I feel more accomplished than I did when I came on. So thanks for all the compliments.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All fully deserved. And I'm hoping we'll catch up soon. If you're not already, then be sure to follow Michael Fisher on all of the socials. It's the MrMobile. Correct?
Don't forget the "the." That is correct.
By the way, was that because MrMobile wasn't available?
Yeah, I think it was an Australian cellular phone retailer maybe had that domain or something. And we were like, we could buy it, but let's just put the "the" in there.
Yeah. Job done. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Fisher, we'll hopefully have you on the podcast in the future again, and I'm really looking forward to hearing and seeing yours at some point in the future too.
Thank you, sir.
Looking forward to it.
If the format of either one of those shows accommodates guests, you are at the top of the list.
Thank you, man. It'd be an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Hopefully catch up soon in person.
Sounds like a plan.
Take care, man.
Be well, man.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode. Big thanks to Michael Fisher for taking the time out. If you're not already following him, do go ahead and follow him on the MrMobile. I'll leave links down in the show notes and in the description. And if you want to hear and see more episodes like this, then be sure to follow the podcast. It is SuperSaf Speaks on all of the platforms. And we also have clips on YouTube at SuperSaf Speaks. Thanks for watching and listening. This is Saf on SuperSaf Speaks, and I'll see you next time.